what's up? This is Ron. Yo, this is Micah, and this is In the Middle. And we're back for another episode of In the Middle podcast.
Sir.
So this is gonna be
Ron.
And I'm Micah, and y'all already know me. I'm the loudest voice recording. Ron's cooler than me, and he's smooth. But so I'm going to be quiet because I get too excited about stuff. Because Ron has some fantastic updates since our last podcast.
Oh yeah, so we're discussing again the movement as we're in the midst of it with everyone being able to come out now and not just have to sit silently and idly by with their one for social change and social justice reform and justice reform in general, and the cases involving Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia. To update on that real quick, all the suspects have pleaded not guilty. That was no surprise to anyone. But the individual in question who actually recorded the incident is also looking at some additional charges for possibly some sexual misconduct. They're not exactly sure if that's with minors or not, but he's looking at that right now, in addition to the charge that's been set by the DA down there for the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. There hasn't been a specific date set yet as far as hearing. From my understanding, the hearing is having a bit of a tough go as far as like when to set it, because all the notoriety with the case, how everything was put in the media. Their lawyers are already going to the tactic of not getting a fair trial, etc. So this thing is gonna stretch out for a while, until the media kind of, for lack of a better term, lets it kind of go for a while. Breonna Taylor, her case out of Louisville, Kentucky, the DA is still not willing to prosecute. For what reasons, he really won't even say. Even at this point, it's been more than 140 some odd days since this incident occurred, where Breonna Taylor was murdered in her home during the execution of a no-knock warrant by plainclothes police officers. At this time, they've made some strides in their own legislature just to establish the Breonna's law, which outlaws no-knock warrants in the state of Kentucky. So I mean, that is a small win, but it's not the bigger win that everybody is looking for, which is to get some prosecutions. Now, an update has come out within the month that the FBI is engaging in its own investigation in an effort to seek prosecution criminally, and that has come from the Louisville field office itself. They held a press conference and gave some updates to where they're establishing their case from, which is pretty obvious to anybody. You don't have to be a lawyer, that the incompetence and the negligence on the part of the police officers in question who established this warrant were not in the proper place of due diligence as far as vetting information, getting confirmations on who actually lived there, if there was in fact actual drug activity, etc., etc. And this it resulted in a loss of life that should have never happened. So, at a minimum, without stating expressly what charges they're seeking, they're at least looking for, as far as the pillars of this case, negligent homicide or involuntary manslaughter. One of the two are what's being sought here at a minimum. And for whatever reason, the state's attorney, even the governor himself, is starting to ask questions as to why his own state's attorney will not prosecute and have yet to have any updates. So that should let you know. And the governor is willing and open to a special prosecutor coming in from the Justice Department and making a case for Miss Taylor and her wrongful death in that circumstance. Those are the two major cases that are going on right now that I have updates on. We all know what's going on with George Floyd. The main guy, Mr. Chauvin, is still locked up, but the other three officers have been granted bond, and there hasn't been a case date for that yet. So that one still kind of remains the same from our last podcast. But that is what is going on. We're seeing a lot of standing up for Breonna Taylor, specifically within the sports world. Everybody knows sports has kind of come back now, and it's been made a point specifically by the WNBA players to dedicate games to her and make sure that her name is always said at some point, to bring just some continued light on what happened to her, and the fact that there's been no prosecution or sought prosecution by the state's attorney's office. And the NBA as well, overall, they're not expressive in naming folks, but they're also making it a point to stand for some social justice reform and police reform, among other things, education reform. You'll see some of the players have different things on the back of their jerseys, in addition to Black Lives Matter on the court, etc. So it's honestly, for me, it's been good to see sports back, and I think that no matter how you feel about Black Lives Matter, particularly as an organization, the idea and the thought that we need to stop being under attack as African Americans by law enforcement officers is a pretty real deal, and that racism is very intertwined in all levels of our society right now, that chooses to take part in sports that is predominantly built on the backs of African Americans, whether you like it or not. You've got all major aspects of sports that involve us, but most importantly, football and basketball that we dominate. So it's only appropriate that at some point in time, okay, like the Colin Kaepernicks of the world, we're kind of done with this. We're kind of, and then finally there's this veil has been lifted to allow these guys. And I hate that it's that way, but it just goes to show that these guys finally are able to say the things they want to say, express them the way they want to express them, beyond what their sport is, and not fear any retribution, away from the top by ownership or front office or whatever you want to call it, and not having a fear of being blackballed like Colin Kaepernick was. So we're gonna dig deep into that. Me and Michael, we've got our own different views on that, and lastly, we're gonna discuss a little bit of some financials. If you guys are listening, our viewership, our listenership, if you're not investing right now and you're not saving up anything right now, if you feel like you can't because of this pandemic, I encourage you to think otherwise, because it's very possible to do. There are a lot of different platforms out there now, things like Robinhood, Thinkorswim, TD Ameritrade. You can save up as much as you would spend on a meal at McDonald's right now. It's very possible to do. You can get into stocks that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get into as a whole. You can get into them fractionally, and by fractionally I mean you can take that one share of, let's just say, Amazon, right? Amazon is way up there. It's like $3,000 now, and you wouldn't be able to logically think, oh, I got $3,000, I can buy this one share. Well, if you've got $20, okay, you can buy a fraction of that $3,000 share, okay, and you can compound that interest and build on that. You don't have to feel like you got to get in directly and be able to buy those stocks at whole price, and feel like that's where you got to start, because you don't. You can get yourself set up in small baby steps as you learn the market and as you understand even trading, if you decide to get into it. I think it's important for people to understand that saving and getting your current self and your future self in line, because your future self is going to thank you 30 years down the road, as far as compound interest and savings is concerned, when it comes time for that check to stop. Eventually, you're not going to be able to be in the workforce unless you either are your own boss, or you establish yourself from a retirement perspective and have some money that you can live off when that time comes. There is a shelf life for us to be employed, and if you don't believe that, I don't know what to tell you. But start saving now. We're gonna try to incorporate a little bit of financial literacy. If you guys got questions about getting started with savings, things like that, you can hit our Facebook page, you can hit our Instagram page, ask questions, engage in the conversations. Even if it's a previous episode, you want to talk to us, me or Micah, about anything that we said, any different topics you think we should discuss in the future on future episodes. We'd love all that stuff, so that'd be awesome. Yeah, so let's move back into the sports. I want to move back into the sports and how sports has gotten kicked off and its relevance now to Black Lives Matter, and how you think it's doing for that movement itself. What's on your mind, Mr. Micah?
Oh, I don't pay attention to it no more. I stopped paying attention to it when I realized what the organization was about and how things have been structured from the media's coverage of it. So, for example, you used to be a person in law enforcement, and you were among those who are considered the good cops. What I notice is that when it comes to the way the media shapes the narrative, is if there's a group of black people that do a certain thing, they are quick to say, well, that's not the lion's share group of black people. When it's protesters and Antifa members that do certain things, they say, well, that's not what the protesters are. The majority are peaceful. That is factually and evidentially true. Just there's no argument there. As soon as a police officer does something, it's all police officers are this, F12, this. And I'm like, well, hold on. I understand that. I understand the sentiment. Once again, the sentiment of Black Lives Matter, the slogan that Black Lives Matter, I'm with. The organizational group who was founded by self-proclaimed Marxists, who was founded by women who do not care about my black life as a man and a black father until I am dead by the hands of either a white person who is racist or a cop who is presumed to be racist because they are a cop. I cannot get with that organization. So as far as Black Lives Matter themselves, I am happy that there are people that are stepping up against them, the organization. I want to make sure it's very specific. I'm only specifically talking about the organization. I'm very happy that they're getting the pushback because I believe it has to be pushed back against. I believe there should be balance and fairness in voices. So, for example, there was the black lady who was a pastor who decided to go ahead and douse Black Lives Matter and black paint. And I believe that was done the one that was done in New York in front of Trump Tower. That was New York. While that was cool because you want to push back, that was also dumb because it validates the organization's sentiment that black lives don't matter, that you're a pastor, you represent Christianity, which brainwashed black people forever. And I've always found that argument funny because it's kind of hard to tell me that a religion that is founded in a place where there's pretty much all brown people, that talks mostly about brown people and their interaction with other people in the world, is somehow a white man's religion. But hey, that's another conversation for another time. Right. And I do like the people that smartly push back against the Black Lives Matter murals that were on public property, because they're on public property. And government, as you and I know, can't just endorse one group over another when it comes to, especially when it First Amendment rights. So there's some groups right now that are in the middle of suing. I know one state, I forgot the state, are suing some of the places that have these Black Lives Matter murals because they want to be able to put Blue Lives Matter. They want to be able to put something related to more faith-based. They want to be able to put those up there, and in some places they were denying it.
A few
And
places have done that.
yeah,
They've
a few places have done that.
I want to say
Yeah,
Idaho. I think they put
I believe
Blue
so.
Lives Matter
I believe
mural
so.
up. Yeah.
So I mean, while I don't care for any street mural to be made, because I'm like, well, both of y'all are dumb, because your street mural means nothing to me. Because the one
Right.
thing that you and I have consistently talked about, even with some fundamental disagreements, we've consistently talked about, where's my laws, where's my
Right.
legislations, where are the things that tangibly actually set the stage for true fairness and equity, maybe not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, that the same thing is going to happen at the front end, at the very least, to people in different situations that just happen to be black, happen to be white. That's all I ask for. And if you're not going to give me that, then your mural can go kick rocks.
Yeah.
Your mural can go kick your Black Lives Matter mural can kick rocks. Your Blue Lives Matter mural can kick rocks, because neither one of y'all are coming with actual fundamental tangible
No,
solutions.
and it's not leveling the playing field for us
Exactly.
who've been intentionally put behind the curve as far as home ownership, business ownership, loans, small business loans. The list goes on, and in some states it's expressly a law.
Yes.
We're talking things that are still hinging from Jim Crow era, that should you decide it in court would still stand today, which is mind blowing. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. I appreciate a mural. I get
Mm-hmm.
its symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking what it does to raise awareness and all of that.
Yes.
But if it isn't going to establish what's necessary and what people are actually calling for, what good is it?
Nope.
What
So,
good is it?
like for example, you brought up Breonna Taylor, and I'm going to ask you a question related to her, because I get really mad when I hear her name now, not because of the situation, but because of what I'm seeing on the back end from people who I know have the resources, and who I know have the resources, and they have the connections to make some things happen, and they're purposely not doing it. Senator Rand Paul got together with some other folks, and it took care of that legislation for no knock warrants. Okay, there's other states that are trying to do similar things to what they already did, but they were the first to do it. Um, and I hear about a variety of things going on when it comes to trying to improve real, actual, tangible laws. But they're talking, and we already know how certain parties love to talk about helping black people, but once the election year is over, they toss us aside. Um, so the Breonna Taylor situation really makes me angry, and it makes me angry from the standpoint that this young lady has not gotten her due justice. Um, and there seems to be a lot of complications to the case, whereas there's some people that believe that they're not really confident in being able to prove that, being able to criminally prove that what those cops did was at least manslaughter. I disagree with that, but I am not a legal expert. I do not know how to properly go about proving that what they did was manslaughter. All I know is what I know about the particular case. But here's something else that I do know. Once again, I'm still not a legal expert, but I do know this. There's something called civil court. And consequences for people who do certain things that are against anyone else can be levied both in criminal and civil courts. So if you cannot get the justice that you want from the legal system in a criminal standpoint, then you know what? Then maybe there's some civil damages that can be done. And there are plenty of brown, black, minority attorneys, lawyers, and other people who are not the state DA, who have no need to deal with them, that can bring the appropriate lawsuit against these people and these officers. And yes, I understand that these officers have families. I understand these officers probably have people they got to take care of. Breonna had family and people that she probably was taking care of too. I don't know all her family background. Maybe she had people that was connected to her that needed her to be around and needed her presence. Well, guess what? They don't have her presence anymore. So guess what? You failed in your duty to do the things that was right. And so you must take the consequences for your actions. This is something I am teaching to my children.
Hmm.
Okay, you.
Yeah.
If we are to teach a child that they are to take responsibility for their actions, but then a grown man and a couple people around him are let off scot free without any form of consequence, I'm sorry, I'm not with that. And when it comes to the Breonna Taylor situation, that's what I care about more than anything. If the criminal court system don't want to do anything, there's other things going on.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with how I felt about the George Zimmerman thing and the Sandra Bland thing. And any one of these cases where it seemed like the people who were directly involved got off scot-free criminally,
Uh-huh.
nobody who has knowledge of the civil justice, the civil aspect of law, has taken these people to task and have destroyed their lives financially, which
Well,
is the
well,
ultimate outside of their regular freedom, will be, in my
that
opinion, the best way to destroy their freedom.
that has occurred. To say that it doesn't happen isn't necessarily 100%. I mean,
Good.
that happens. It's just not as sexy in the media. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to Brianna and what's happened with her, there is pending litigation criminally, and before you can go civilly, that's got to be restitute. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. That's why
So
I brought that up, because I figured that you didn't
because
know.
you will start to find yourself in this area of double jeopardy that the whoever the defendant is gonna say, well, I've already been taken to court for this, whether it's criminally or not.
Okay.
If they are taken to court criminally, you cannot have pending litigation civilly. You can't. It's the
That seems to be
court
something else that should be changed.
because it's basically like a higher court of justice.
Okay.
Okay, because this person could be potentially locked up, face death penalty, whatever the case may render out to be, or what the consequences could be. It's going to be far worse than just a financial damage. They're still
Okay.
going to have their freedom. They're still going to have a means to go about their life that's not as restricted as say a criminal court conviction. So,
Okay. So there's a court hierarchy here when it comes to the difference.
if you want to put it that way,
Civil is underneath the criminal.
yeah,
Okay.
because just the civil court just says that you're liable.
Okay.
Okay. At the end of the day, if a civil court finds you guilty, you're paying a lawsuit back. You're paying court fees. That's pretty much what it amounts to, and whatever the other stipulations might be rendered in the case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a plaintiff can say, "Well, I want you to pay my court fees and damages, but I also want you to establish a trust for X amount of dollars in honor and name of such and such or whatever." Right? And you would be obligated to that. You would be obligated to establish that. But at the end of the day, you're still free.
That's true.
You're still able to go about your day-to-day life.
But the reason why I brought up that civil litigation is because depending on who it is, like, a person paying back a trust fund or a settlement that has the income level of a Harvey Weinstein, and we know how much crap that guy did. I believe it's different from the police officers who took the life of Breonna Taylor. They may walk kind of free, but they are, unless they get one of those things where if the police union steps in and pays for them, if the police union wants to protect them in that way.
That was going to be my next point. Is that
okay.
these 2 out of the 3 are still employed under the police department. Okay, so that means they still have protections that will be afforded to them in that job role. Okay, so the only real the only real like fish in this, as far as civil goes, is the one who got fired.
Okay.
He's not going to have as many protections, but if you can get all 3 of them removed from the department without the department saying, "Oh, well, whatever your number is, we'll settle it on their behalf," because that's what will happen. That is where you've got qualified immunity and all this stuff taking action, and it allows for the city, the municipality, the state, whatever, to step in as a result of what their job title is, still at the current time of that court filing. Okay, you got to get these guys after they've been expressly removed, fired, resigned, whatever. Then they lose those protections, so that at least half of your case would kind of have some hit in civil that it would have had in criminal.
Okay, so your scenario with this particular situation right here would be that even without the criminal charges, if all three at least got fired, then the civil suit will be a little bit more stronger and have a little bit more more firm, because now they have no out.
Right, and you can list all three of them under the same civil suit versus one.
Yes.
Okay, so if I was an attorney, if I was a civil attorney looking at this, I'm looking at it for what my client can get the most out of it. Okay, I'm wanting to get all three of them. I'm wanting to establish, civil damages on all three to get a collective settlement that's going to be 3 times what it would be, versus one. Okay, because that's all you're getting. That's all you're getting is those damages. Some return and saying that you were liable in the death, but again, we know you're not going to go to jail.
Yeah.
But depending on how the lawsuit is set up, they might be paying the Taylor family for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, which I'm at least perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. And that's the thing that gets me mad. Thank you for clearing up some of the information and misconceptions that I had. I still want to know how come now. Granted, I know you want to. Some things you should move behind the background. You should move behind the scenes and then bring it to light when it's necessary. But I can't shake this feeling of the Sandra Bland, George Zimmerman, the just the things where the cop may be fired or the police department may be fined, but nothing really actually tangibly consistently happened to these people. And for example, this a few weeks ago, we should talk about it then, but it was a few weeks ago where one of the cops that was arrested in the George Floyd case was out and about at a store. He was store. Yeah, he was just chilling, with his bag of Oreos and stuff, and a Karen, because that's what she was acting like, decided to go ahead and video him and shame him. I'm like, you're shaming a guy who's free from assisting in a murder of a man. You're shaming him. I'm actually quite surprised that not her specifically, but there's a whole group of people that say one thing, blow up a building with nobody in it, but then when push comes to shove and the people who actually started it are right in your face, you do nothing. We know why, but you were big and bad enough to do property damage. You were big and bad enough to do vandalism. You're big and bad enough to take statues down at risk of your own life because somebody is in a coma still from taking down a statue because for some odd reason someone told them statues were bad, even though they never really grew up with that kind of racism in their life. You're able to do that. And I'm not calling for violence against anybody because I would never want to call for violence against anybody. But there was a time where if there was justice to be served, it was served. There's a certain community that Nick Cannon was talking about that he got in trouble for talking about in a negative way, that they had a string of violent acts done against them up in New York.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
There was some interesting talk going around about the violent act that the community up there gave the police officers that were investigating 48 hours to get the job done. Otherwise, they'd go take care of it themselves. Now, interesting enough, why would a community want to band together to take care of things that were directly affecting them? And they told the police, if you don't do it, we will. Yet there's another group of people who are sitting here, and less than 10%, it's probably even less, it's not even less than 10%. It's a fraction of a percent of us that get affected by police brutality, to be truthfully honest. And they got to be honest about it. It's a fraction of a percent that get affected by police brutality to the point of death. Let me be very specific. To the point of death. And they do nothing. Stockholm Syndrome, fear, knowing that once you retaliate in that way, like you scared the public with a march, few statues, and graffiti. You kind of scared them, and they're kind of doing something okay. And you say that anger actually does things. But you scared like Karen's in St. Louis and Karen and Kyle in St. Louis who held guns up. I'm so glad you taught me how to hold a gun because they had some really bad gun discipline.
Oh yeah,
You go on private property and you trespass in places like that. You make a stupid plaza and all that thing, but you have access to the very people who caused this, and you do nothing. Why? I mean, if this is you've
well,
been big and bad enough to do
because
all this other stuff, but yet
because
you don't go to that next
people
level.
aren't that, they're not that, if you want to put it that way, they're not that down for the cause. Okay.
Ah, yeah,
Like at the
exactly.
end of the day, they're still gonna take a step back and say, all right, you know, I really ain't trying to go to jail for this, for assault or whatever. Um, you're recording it, so there's no backing away from
Yeah,
the fact that it was you.
yeah.
So there's all those little factors that are going through people's heads. They're so scared to death that they don't, you know, they want to have a reason for uprising and being upset and all that, but
Or
they're
twerking in front of a police line.
or that. I mean,
Or,
you
or,
know,
the, or the other lady who was real bold. She went bucket, not just naked, bucket
yeah,
naked. That was
she stood
scary.
at the line like, what y'all gonna do? But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, people just they just don't want to get sucked up into a system that they know isn't fair. Okay, especially, and just follow me on this thought process here.
Yes.
That if they might be a minority and they're gonna get it 10 times worse, you know, and they might not have had anything on their record prior to that, but you know, everything, all the elements are there of premeditation and all this stuff. Maybe a little bit of happenstance, but once the opportunity was presented to you, you ended up like a shark to you know, blood in the water, and
Okay, that's cool, man.
you're
I
gonna
want to
get
counter.
served up in
I want to
court on
counter
that.
with this. I want to counter with this. You say minority, all that stuff, right? Those same people that you're just talking about when it comes to a case like this pulled old white men out of their car because they presumed that they were Trump supporters and beat them up. So they had no problem with pulling white people out of their cars and beating them up, complaining on Twitter that their lying protests, that someone who we don't know if they disagree with them or not, someone white, a white lady, okay, had her in a car and she decided to drive around it because she didn't want to drive through it because she wanted to respect the protest. She drove around the protest line, trying to go about her business, and they followed the car and harassed the lady in the car and then get mad
Yeah.
when she decides to go ahead and push the gas a little bit to kind of get you off her car. So I hear what you're saying.
It's
But the actions,
I really just think it's about the
actions that
aspect.
the actions that the people have done though have proved to me that they're down for the cause when they know there's no real repercussions for it.
That's what I was about to say.
I was
Like
about to say,
there's no real pinning.
beating up an old white man with a MAGA hat, I guess is the same as going up.
Right, especially if you got a mask on, you got, you know, you
Yeah.
kind of wearing what the crowd's wearing. All of this stuff is running through people's minds as they either decide to engage or not.
Yeah.
It's just human nature.
And like I said, I can understand.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I just want to make sure you see where I'm coming from when I
Oh,
was talking about
absolutely.
that. I just find it interesting how, you know, hey, old white man or group of white guys with MAGA hats, let's attack them. Let's see, the guy who actually helped kill George Floyd. No, I'm gonna shame you in a grocery store if you're Oreos.
I mean, yeah, but think about it. She's
But
she's
you
on
know,
her camera.
that's before people was wearing masks though, and then Antifa members got inspired.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, I get what you're saying. I'm with that. It's like either you're really down for it and getting into the thick of it or not.
Yeah, and I don't mean just on that level. Again, I'm not calling for violence. What I'm saying is you're going to be consistent and you're going to go after somebody and physically assault a person for wearing a red hat. Then maybe, but not go after the people who actually did it. Then maybe I feel like your priorities are a little mixed up, and maybe you should stop resorting to violence because your violence is consistent. It's only convenient. But the same as with these people who are brown and who are well-meaning, who are attorneys and lawyers and are already in the legal system that can actually fundamentally do something. You know, I understand that is on click too. That's his own click.
Oh yeah, man.
It's on click. So I understand
you gotta
that.
think. You
Some
gotta
people
think,
don't want to overstep their careers and risk all the hard work
yeah,
they've done just to stand up for something that may
because
not actually that may not actually really be effective for them to do so. I understand,
you gotta
but
you, you
an
gotta think
injustice
too.
somewhere is
People are under firms too. They
absolutely.
don't. They're
Yeah.
they're just practicing attorneys under someone else.
Yeah,
You
and if the
know,
firm's not down with that, and the firm's
right?
not down with that, they can risk their job in that end. And of course,
Oh
depending on
yeah,
who's in the firm, they can have connections to the bar association. And I understand
yeah.
there's
That
layers
that
and nuance to
whole
people doing that, but once
racism
again,
is there,
yeah, it's
especially
there.
even with judges. It's
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
there.
it's when you look back at the history of being a practicing attorney and what extents were put in to say, oh well, you can't just go to law school and become an attorney.
Hmm.
You know, the bar exam is the first example of systemic racism in and of itself. If you
Do
look
you,
at the history of the
the
bar exam,
certification? Oh, the history of the bar exam
yes,
itself. Okay.
and how you could go about taking the test, etc. What you needed. I
Hmm.
mean, if you could go back as far as colonial times, see how easy it was. You could become a lawyer just basically by completing college. You didn't
I mean,
necessarily
hey,
have to be.
Hamilton
You
taught
didn't
us
necessarily.
that.
You didn't. Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
you didn't necessarily have to go to law school.
Hmm.
Okay, a law school was only established. What? Correct me, I might be wrong, but law school was established well after the establishment of lawyership and the
Okay.
occupation of being a lawyer and what it meant to enter a practice or establish your own practice, and that was a sole attempt to keep us from it, to keep the
I think
keep.
a lot of different fields like medicine, like the practicing law,
Mhm.
science, and things like that. They have created these blocks over time specifically to keep blacks and other minorities and poor whites
Mhm.
away from that elite class. It's one of the reasons why I
Yeah.
always laugh at the praxis exam. The praxis exam as an educator is what I had to take in order to showcase that I have the substantial knowledge to go into teaching.
Mhm.
However, there are people who have better praxis test scores than me, people who have fantastic praxis scores on the test that absolutely are garbage at the teaching profession. It's because the test, just like the SOL test or any other state mandated high stakes testing, doesn't accurately show if the person is capable of doing the work. It just
Mhm.
shows that they have brain knowledge.
Right. They've got
And
the aptitude.
the bar exam is the same thing. Like there could be a very effective lawyer, attorney, or person who understands law right now
Yeah.
that didn't pass a bar, but we would never have access to that person, whether they be black or white or whatever, only
Mhm.
because of that separating factor. There's a lot of things that are set up for class and race. And I'm in agreement with
Yeah.
you. I can understand
Yeah.
how one can see the history of the bar exam and things like that. But you know what's
Yeah,
funny?
man.
But you know what's funny about you saying that those blocks, right? And
Mhm.
how certain institutions put up those blocks. You was talking about earlier about the different sports leagues that were doing their social justice, the woke center thing, and all this stuff. I found it very interesting that it took what happened to George Floyd to change the WNBA's mind about Black lives actually mattering. Because long before our male NBA players were trying to be all extra woke, our sisters in the WNBA, which I don't follow them that much. I'm sorry, I don't watch
Mhm.
WNBA. I know Lisa Leslie and Candace Parker. Lisa Leslie because she's the older one and the star of LA Sparks, and Candace Parker because I saw her play college basketball, and I was like, good gosh, that woman's a beast.
Mhm.
So there was, I don't know a lot of the WNBA stars, but before the Pulse nightclub shooting happened, there was a string of things that sparked Black Lives Matter protests initially. They wanted to wear attire and T-shirts, matching T-shirts approved with the logo of the company that whoever this sports sponsor was. I think they had, it was either Reebok or Nike at the time, but I know the NBA is primarily with Nike. But I think they had a Reebok sponsor for a uniform. But either way, they wanted to do that. They wanted to show their solidarity for those Black lives that were lost, and the
Mhm.
WNBA refused to let them wear it. They made them, however, league wide, because this was like one team that wanted to do it. It wasn't like the
Mhm.
whole league wide thing. It was just
I
a
think I remember
franchise thing.
this.
It was a
This
few
is
franchises too. And with all
yeah.
due respect to those people who lost their lives in the Pulse nightclub shooting, for the WNBA to tell a predominantly black league that the Pulse nightclub shootings lives mattered more because it was a specific voting base versus the black people that were actually tangibly going through some things that were very real before that nightclub shooting. And to deny one in favor of the other really showed me where the WNBA stood. Now, for those of you that don't know, WNBA is kind of its own entity, but everything in the WNBA is ran on the NBA's dime. The WNBA is not a self-sufficient sports league. They are a sports league in proxy to the male NBA, So they've been paying. The NBA has been paying all their bills. You want real equity and equality, in my opinion, break off from the NBA and make your own money. That's just my opinion. But some people may find that to be kind of wrong and kind of downplayed. Like, no, I want these women to show how strong and capable of a product they have, because they only play 3 months out the year. They complain about not being paid well. You only play 3 months out the year. I don't even know what TV station you're on. You're not even on the mainstream network. You got to do what the NBA did. Negotiate your network deals. Make sure you get in some good slots during that prime time, and go for more than just 3 months. Go 6 months. Go have a 6-month season, and then structure your season that is not competing with the freaking NFL and college football.
Right.
So,
yeah.
The only reason why the NBA is going to do kind of okay and baseball is going to do kind of okay, and it's because the NFL, when the NFL comes back, is because we wanted just all sports. So we were dying for having a lot of sports back. So we're going to give a little bit more even keel attention, I believe. But I found that interesting that the WNBA is all of a sudden woke enough to care about Black lives, when at first a nightclub shooting was more important than a franchise or two showing their solidarity for people who were suffering from police brutality that were Black. So I found that interesting.
It was very individual with the WNBA.
Yes.
I mean, there were players that, they were wanting to stand up for Trayvon Martin and wanting to stand up for Sandra Bland and Alton Sterling, and when the first initial hashtags start to drop, and then it would just fizzle out, because again, they don't get as much they don't get as much shine as the NBA. They've got an ESPN deal. They got, I believe they're on, their local networks, like, like NBA, what is it, NBC Sports, their sports network, CBS Sports Network.
Networks that people don't tend to watch unless they have a certain cable.
Unless it's right, or unless it's like a local thing.
Yes.
But, it's something that I think, eventually they've got to be able to put it on record, like, hey, we're not for this. Just how the NBA commissioner comes out and says, listen, this is where we stand as a league. And not have it be some sub stories about a co-owner that I believe it's the Mystics. I think she is a senator, but she's a co-owner of the team, and she's outright said she doesn't believe in Black Lives Matter, and when the question was asked,
did she say the organization or the?
That's what I was about to get at.
Okay.
She doesn't really make it a point to say which way. She just says, listen, I'm not for that.
You can't do that. You got to be specific.
Right. So, and she's a Republican. I hate to say it that way, but once you allow people to make their own opinion about you optically, you're pretty much done.
Yeah, so she's done. In that light, yeah.
Now players are going around knowing that she's up for re-election. They're championing her opponent. It's a male. I think his last name is Warnock. Raphael Warnock.
No, it ain't. His last name ain't Warlock.
Warnock.
It's Warlock. Trust me, it's Warlock. It's a play on words, but his last name is actually Warlock. He's probably a wizard. It's fine.
Okay, all right. I don't think that's true. Anyways, they're basically doing a silent protest now for that in the midst of this whole thing, to basically have her lose her Senate seat. I mean, I just honestly think it's about time that these players are able to not fear the same type of ridicule and retribution that ultimately Colin Kaepernick had to deal with being blackballed because he was such an individual with this thing at the time, or at least
Mm-hmm.
on his own admission. There were other players that wanted to kneel, but it
They
wasn't
wanted
as
to make sure. Yeah,
it,
yeah, I understand.
yeah, they were kind of feeling out the financial risks of it. Um, I just think it's good. I've enjoyed watching NBA games that have been on the past few days or few weeks or whatever.
Yeah, some of the games been alright. I had to train. I had to change the channel a few times during the commercial because it was like,
Sometimes it gets
the commercials was doing too much. I was like, come on, man, I don't
yeah,
need to know. I don't need to have 45 commercials talking about how woke you are, and I know you're
yeah.
lying to me. I
It
I
gets
know
thick.
you as an organization fully is lying to me. I don't need like
Yeah.
I now LeBron James puts his stuff out there that he does.
Mm-hmm.
He has a public relations team, he has a PR team, so he puts stuff out there that I promise school, all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
we directly know what he's doing. There's other people, other basketball players that we don't know directly what they're doing. I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't need to know. You don't have to show off to me how woke and how blessed you are to be blessed with other people. That's cool.
Right.
My only thing with this whole thing and where I was coming from is just a couple of places. I'm all for all of our black and white sports athletes to have an opinion on something that matters to them.
Yeah.
I do not care about your opinion when I'm looking at you play your sport. You have a fantastic platform that gives you a voice on YouTube, on Twitter, on your own podcast, on any other sports show that's outside of you playing sports. Part of me rather will go ahead and cut on Borderlands a pre-sequel when I get to the basketball court and like, man, this is a good game. What the heck is that on? Oh gosh, these people, man. Yeah, going and honestly, I wouldn't even be that
Yeah.
way. I wouldn't be that way. It's not, and once again, it's not because I don't believe in the sentiment. It's because it comes out of the mouths of people who are safe to say, who are in an environment that is safe to say what they say while doing their sport. Not that they're saying it outside. Because see, like I said, we talked about the Colin Kaepernick thing, right? I could only imagine how different it would have been received had he not been doing it during the games. If he didn't do it during the national anthem, but he was not necessarily kneeling. I'm talking about just doing the kneeling itself is one thing. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
actual speaking out consistently about police injustice, police brutality, racial injustice, systemic racism, all those things. If he was doing that outside of the football game, I really do believe it will be more well received by the very people who had all this vitriolic hatred towards him because they were thinking about the symbolism and then his first initial words of saying he's not standing for a flag. Because he said out his own mouth he wasn't standing for a flag that he believes represents this, that, and the third. And then there's other people who see black and white that see that flag in a different way. That's why they kept saying his protest was disrespectful to the flag based on his own initial words. And so to act like that comment never existed is you're missing the full concept of everything that Colin Kaepernick was talking about initially. Now, granted, as everyone who starts with a movement, many of them evolve. I believe that he has evolved in his rhetoric and understanding that it wasn't. And while initially I said this about the flag, it really isn't about the flag. But there's still some things about him personally that I will touch on a long time afterwards that I believe were fake. But I believe if he did all that without the kneeling and still did the racial justice thing, I think he'll be fine. Because think about it, LeBron James, outside the I Can't Breathe t-shirts, and outside the I Can't Breathe t-shirts was done on the court pre-game before all this extra stuff the NBA was doing. There wasn't really a lot of stuff the NBA players were doing on the court or before games that was steering away their fan base that may be turned off by I don't feel like seeing this stuff all the time. I just want to see y'all play basketball.
Right. Like a lot of it was very quiet in retrospect. Like aside from the game, unless you like followed their social media or something like that, there wasn't a time where LeBron James was coming up in a practice interview talking about Alton Sterling or or about he might have talked about Trayvon Martin a little bit.
I think so.
But that's it. That's all.
And of course they did it. Him, Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, and and Carmelo Anthony did the little thing at the ESPYS. That
Okay.
little standing speech at the ESPYS, but that's the
Yeah.
ESPYS. Like, come on,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
where
Like that's what I mean. It's
that's where a
like
bunch of woke people pat themselves in the back. You're not really going to
it.
get any flack from doing that at the ESPYS.
Nah, because it's a one time thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not really affecting the shield or the brand itself's pocket.
Yes.
It just isn't. When you start to affect people's pockets, that's where it gets a little murky.
Hence the reason why Dan Snyder changed the Washington Redskins team name to the Washington Football Team until they can figure one out. Because his big donors, yes, his big donors.
FedEx,
mm-hmm.
the people, the FedEx CEO, the ones that pretty much fund the Redskins.
Yes.
I don't care what nobody says.
They'd be dead without them.
There would not be a franchise without the FedEx organization.
I believe that.
Backing them. Okay, so when these dudes start to say, "Hey, we're gonna pull our name off the stadium," we're not footing the bill for the stadium, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it got real fast.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with you.
As a businessman, let's not. When people, I always think it's funny when people start telling me, "Oh, they just did this out the kindness of their heart, and they finally had a change of heart." Well, no, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
Their wallet had a change of heart. Okay,
yes.
They started to see the red and not the black.
Yes.
Okay, no pun intended. But seriously, it's like that's what it all comes down to. You start to play with the greenback. Okay. These people are not willing to risk that. They'll let the ship come and go on your wokeness if it means that they're still going to get paid and still maintain the same level of existence that they currently have.
Exactly.
That is
and people got to be real. I believe, Ron, that people aren't really real with that because one of the things that is saving the NBA right now is their contract with China, right? And that's why when it comes to the NBA. I really don't. I want to smack Steve Kerr in the face. I want to smack Greg Popovich in the face, and I'll give 2 slaps to LeBron James because that whole thing back when Daryl Morey tweeted out "Free Hong Kong" so that Hong Kong can remain its own democratic republic, its own republic, its own independent entity that has its own set of freedoms. Yeah. They talked down to this dude so much and try to make him seem like a pariah among the league. These same people, safely, mind you, because they're in America, they safely criticized Darth Orange from their palatial estates in various areas of the country, from their polished basketball courts and their wonderful billion-dollar stadiums, arenas that have some of the best state-of-the-art technology, especially the new ones getting built depending on what franchise they play for. I mean, for crying out loud, Steve Kerr got a fantastic, the Golden State Warriors new arena. My God. Yeah. But they talk like that, and I get angry not at the fact that they're saying what they want to say, but because I know that they're lying to me. Because you can have the opinion about the president if you want to, but what the president is doing is nothing to what China actually is doing to people who are associated with your brand.
Right.
But because that is a good steady. This is how real power. And I keep telling people all the time, Marana, you and I agree with this. This is how real power is obtained. The power doesn't have to necessarily just come from the laws, because if you control people's pockets and the way and means they create their livelihood, you can control their true opinion. Not one true word about freedom, about justice, about anything in China from any of these people's mouths from the NBA. And even worse, because China actually had a policy in which they enacted on African immigrants, people who look like us in skin tone. And they said they try to blame them for the Rona. They try to blame them for the Rona and how it's been spreading, because China's been lying about their role in the Rona the whole time. If you believe it came from a bat, I have a bridge in Idaho to sell you. Anyway, so they blamed African immigrants and legal, illegal, otherwise. They blamed the black people that was there. And they got Muslim people in concentration camps right now. Like real concentration camps, not ICE detention centers that people want to make it seem like they're concentration camps. So they got people in concentration camps who are Muslim. They falsely evicted, and by our standards in America, illegally evicted African immigrants.
Yep, hundreds of thousands of them.
But there's not a peep about how Black Lives Matter and racial equity and disparities from the same NBA that wants to throw into my face the names of the people who many of us agree
Mhm.
on should have justice
Right.
and should have been had justice. And that's where I am, at least with the NBA. I think the NFL learned their lesson from Colin Kaepernick because that was also during an election year. It's kind of fun and funny that this is happening during election year.
Yeah, these
I mean,
election years is
it's
crazy.
more. It's the most intense. It's been the most intense. This racial injustice thing. It didn't really happen a lot on Obama in 2008, and it didn't happen on Obama in 2012. But when Trump ran in 2016, right before the year right before in 2015, right when he announced his candidacy,
Hmm.
it went ape. And then now in 2020 here, it's going ape. But
Yeah.
I found that at the Major League Baseball started out with woke protest ish. They started out initially, and then they backed off that. Hockey,
Yeah.
which has 4 black people in it. Now, granted, I could be exaggerating. It could really be 2, but I really don't know how many black people play hockey. How many American? We mentioned how many
I only know
American black people
one.
play hockey.
I only know one. His name is Subban, and I only know him because
Is he from America?
I don't know. No, I don't. I think he's from Canada,
Of course, he's Canadian.
but I only know him because he was the first. He was the first black player on the NHL Live. Uh, he was. You know, he was the
Who's an
cover player.
analyst? Oh, cover player. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the only reason I know about him.
Yeah, I mean, it's hockey. It's okay. Like, look, I'm not saying that hockey in the NHL is racist. I'm saying that there's certain sports that black people gravitate to. I
Right.
haven't seen too many American black people gravitate to hockey. Well, that's because there's no opportunity for them to play hockey. Okay. We have Detroit. Okay.
Right.
It's cold up there in Michigan.
All the northern
All the
states,
northern states have enough
Wisconsin.
cold to be
Yeah.
able to, if they wanted to do it, they'd do it. Like it's not this.
Yeah.
Right now, there's nothing at a macro level, maybe some micro, but it's not on a macro level stopping black people from wanting to play hockey.
Nah.
Because honestly, if we wanted to play hockey, especially with the fights, we'll probably win that one too. Anyway, but yeah, they done it. They're like every league is doing a little something except for golf. But we know who the majority of golf's fan base is. It ain't woke white liberals. It's just
Nah.
the majority of golf's fan base isn't woke white liberals. So you have to pay attention to who your audience is, and golf knows better. So they're going to do the PGA Championship this weekend. They're not going to. I bet you they're not going to really show anything.
They're keeping it regular.
As they should.
I was watching some of the first round a little earlier. Tiger Woods had teed off, and a few other people had teed off, and I mean, it really was just like a normal golf televised event. Like it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. There wasn't nothing particularly, socially woke about it.
Mhm.
I mean, they're just really. They're just. It's not a lot of interviews.
Okay.
It's just them getting to the tee and playing the game.
Now,
Like, that's it.
now the commentators, because the commentators are usually very quiet, talking like this for the event. Are they actually? Were they still trying to maintain the quiet, soft voice, or were they like just talking like normal volume?
A few of them actually kind of did, and then one guy was like, "There's no need for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody here." And he was like,
funny.
"Well, yeah, you made a good point there." And it was just like, it's just like, yeah.
Welcome, friends, to the PGA Championship. I am Jim Nance. I wanted to make sure that you. I swear up and down, man. Watching golf sometimes like watching Bob Ross paint with golf balls. It's just so calm. It's a happy little accident.
It is. You can really hear everything. Like it's like you normally watch, you can hear the clapping and stuff, and you hear birds and stuff like that.
I usually listen for the guy that yells, "Get in the hole." Right.
That guy. But you can hear these guys walking on the green, like because the grass is crunching underneath their feet. And shit like
that's
that.
high definition audio right there.
Yeah. I mean, like it's because there's no audience really. So you hear all these different, you can hear little murmurs, little, players talking amongst themselves and stuff like that.
Okay.
But all in all, I would say, PGA, I don't know if they particularly are going for that to be kind of neutral in this kind of space right now, as far as sports or not, but it's coming off that way, and it's coming off very well. Because I'm watching Tiger tee off. I'm just thinking, damn, that was a good shot.
Can you imagine if Tiger gets number if Tiger, because Tiger's got he got his Masters last year, and that was number 15,
I
I
think it was
believe.
15.
And so
Okay.
it'd be nice. It'd be nice if during this COVID stuff, because of the less pressure of the crowd, he just gets 16 and 17 like nothing ever happened.
Yeah,
That'd be nice
right.
because I really enjoy Tiger Woods' game. I may not know how to golf well. I may not even understand what the heck a swing is, but I know Tiger Woods is good, and that man's been good for a long time. And
Very long time.
so my question to you is this: with all those stuff we talk about the sports leagues, I believe there's a place for our athletes and our celebrities and everybody who has all these platforms to be able to express what they want to express.
Hmm.
However, there's times where I believe that there's an appropriate setting and inappropriate setting. For me, I think you should do all the things that you want to do, because I don't go into my classroom and propagate my belief system on my students, because I believe that's inappropriate. One, as the main influencer for them that day, as one of the
Yeah.
main influencers, and then as one of the few black males in this space of education that some people are willing to talk about that. I'm one of the few black males in that space of education. I do not want to propagate any of my beliefs on them. I will ask them to always think for themselves, weigh the options, and find out what's best for them. If they lean that way, great. If you lean the other way, great. But I'm not going to change their minds, because I believe
Yeah.
that's outside the space where it's appropriate for me to do it. Likewise, I believe that, you know, your symbolism, while I'm trying
Hmm.
to enjoy whether or not you're good at your sport, I believe needs to be out the way so I can enjoy my sport. So I can talk about if you trash or not, or if you're the greatest of all time, because we know that you're never going to beat Michael Jordan. But I'm just saying, I want to be able to have that debate
Yeah.
discussion without that being in the middle of it, because I believe that has nothing to do with the greatness of an athlete on the court. Because Michael Jordan is great, and he says Republicans buy sneakers too. Did he
They
not care
do.
about black? Did he not care about
Hmm.
black people in their lives because he believes that Republicans buy sneakers too when he was playing?
Hmm. You're right. Yeah.
That's all. That's where I come from. I don't know how you feel about that.
Right. Because
I just feel like on the
he's
court
got
is
his
not the right
own
place. It's got
he's
his
got
own
his
place.
own belief system.
Yes.
He people always rag him for how he's kind of funded private prisons, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a businessman. Okay, he's not really concerned with the demographics of capacity. Okay, he sees dollar signs. He sees putting money behind this this institution, and what the rate of return is gonna be for him, whether it's at capacity or not. Okay, so, but that's an off the court thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's if Michael Jordan was to come back and play and drop 35 at his age and 5 rebounds or whatever, people are still going to celebrate him as Michael Jordan on the court.
Yes.
They're going to have their opinions about how he spends his money otherwise still anyway, but it's him and his element doing what he does best, which is put the ball in the hoop. All right, that's what he does, and that's what you're watching for, to see him at his greatness doing what he does. You can tune in or tune off to what he does off the court. You
Mm-hmm.
can,
Mm-hmm.
and he's also got the opportunity off the court, just like you said, and I agree that yeah, if he goes on a radio show, if he's on a TV show, whatever, he's not necessarily out there for the NBA brand, right?
Yes.
He's out there for himself. He can say what he wants to say. He or she can say what they want to say in that venue, in that avenue. That's not it.
Now here's where now let me tell you, here's where I will have a big disagreement as far as how effective on the court. If like I said, Colin Kaepernick, whatever have you, using him as an example. If he does what he does, but he never did it on the football field, and they penalized him by blackballing him for things that he was doing that was not illegal, that was not a crime off the field, and he didn't do anything illegal or a crime, and they were penalizing him. Trust me, I'll be one of the people that be saying, no, that's not fair. Colin Kaepernick still deserves a job. He did not do all that stuff while he was on the football field. He played clean. He played a good game.
Right.
He did everything he was supposed to do while he was under your employment. What he does personally, as long as it's not illegal, it doesn't bring harm to anybody else or crime. I care if he wanted to dress in polka dots and go on RuPaul's Drag Race. That's his goddamn business.
I mean, look at Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, you know what I'm
Right?
saying? So
Like he,
at no point in time should it stop that player from being able to do what they. Now, granted, they should be. They are going to be afforded that opportunity because they don't work in regular jobs like you and me. You and me do that.
yeah,
I know that we can be penalized for that, and that's when great lawsuits come into play. They try it, but for at that level, if I don't care how woke LeBron James is acting, if he's doing it off the court and his owner, let's say the owner Lakers or someone indifferent to that nonsense, and his owner somehow releases him or breaks his contract and gets him blackballed, that I can't stand it. I
mm,
don't, what their opinion is and what they do with their lives off the court does not matter to me as much as it does on the court. And do you believe or do you have a sense that people are shaping these players on the courts or on the field legacy by what they do off the court when that has nothing to do with whether or not they can actually play their sport?
yes, and I think it's because of the fact that they're in front of the camera and they're
Mm-hmm.
famous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's not really going to be a way for them to really get away and have that sincere distinction, because once it's out there, once it's in the public space, it's in the public space. And if journalists and other media folks who rate you as far as awards and MVPs and stuff like that, they're privy to that information, it's gonna have some bearing. There's no getting around that. They're still gonna have to focus in on what the person does in the sport, on the court, whatever. But you look at how what's his name? Ray Lewis, right? Look at his track and how he hit the things off the field affected him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now he's still a Hall of Famer. Okay, but it took some time for him to get there. Why? Not because of his on the field play.
Because we think he got off just like OJ did.
That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
There's no getting away from what happens negatively off the field or what happens positively off the field.
Yeah, we saw that with Ray Lewis. We saw that with Mike Vick too. Mike Vick paid his debt to society.
But absolutely.
He paid his
found
debt
guilty.
Found
guilty. Did all that.
All that, and I found it interesting because of course, it's a combination of those. And we got to be honest. And I'm just not everything has the lens of race to it, but I'm being real. Y'all know me. I'm the guy who don't want to put race in everything, but this one was real. I talked to a white guy. He happens to be a white guy. He was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. This was right fresh off of Michael Vick coming off the Eagles. He was getting signed to Pittsburgh as a backup. And he said out his own mouth that he didn't want Michael Vick on his team because of the way he did the Dogs. And I literally said to him right in his face, you do know that your quarterback was accused of raping and sexual assaulting 2 women, right?
Uh-huh.
You want to know? You want to know what he said? It's not the same thing. Oh, really? So now our moral compass changed when the starting two Super Bowl winning quarterback is on the hook for actually being accused of sexual assault, but those things was not proven. Okay, so again, a guy. I'm just saying, if it was me, if we're doing moral compassing here, we're doing moral levels here. I'm sorry, women are more important to me than dogs. If we're doing a moral hierarchy and trying to have a moral high horse here, women are more important than dogs. So I seen, like, it ain't like I don't see in different conversations with people how they will change their tune depending on who their quarterback was. Now, honestly, I believe that, and here's why I want to give this guy some credit. I know he's white, and his quarterback was white at the time too. Well, Ben Roethlisberger is still white. He never changed. Had his starting quarterback been a black quarterback and won those 2 Super Bowls and went to a third and had those allegations, I believe that he would have said the same thing, because he seems like the kind of guy that cares more about animals than people. It just, I just, there's a racial part to it that I think played a role. I do think that even more so, the whole animal lover thing played a role too. There's some animal lovers, man. They have, they have grudge. They have no forgiveness bone in their body.
But when you think about it, though, think about it like this: how did it come to be that animals tend to have more of a favorable right in our justice system than a human being does?
That's ridiculous.
As far as consequences, I mean, like, you could get the death penalty for capital murder. Okay, all right. But did you also know that you could probably get the same amount of time, if not worse, okay, than manslaughter of a person?
That's crazy.
Just for abuse of a dog or
That's
a cat.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, that is not to say that we should be abusive there.
No, it's not.
If someone's going to take that and make it seem like that's what you're advocating for.
I'm just taking the moment here to make a point about how animal lobbyists, okay, different groups in favor of animals, okay, which is their right and their obligation. They can do that. Have made a way for themselves collectively to establish these laws. That's what they've done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they did it through money.
And I think that it just goes to show that really we can get any laws enacted that we want, to the severity that we want, if we collectively do it the appropriate way and or the right way. And it just for us as black folks, I think that we've come a long way in that regard, that we're not shut out of Capitol Hill.
No, we're not. We have a whole place in Capitol Hill called the Congressional Black Caucus. But sometimes I call them the Congressional Bouye. I call them the Congressional Bouye Conference, the Congressional Bouye Caucus. But that's another conversation for another time.
But the caucus itself can't get laws enacted for you. They can only propagate and maybe get some connections going within senators and House representatives to actually get those bills done. But the point is that we can do those things. It shouldn't be to the point where we feel like our lives, aren't protected, when they could in fact actually be protected to the scope and level of a Doberman or a German Shepherd.
Well, not just like, the level, but even at the highest level, get protected to the point where if someone criticizes black people as a community for maybe doing something they shouldn't be doing as a community, that we can label that person as something and force them to apologize publicly, kind of like how some people did with Nick Cannon. Because you can't criticize a group of people for just being.
But I think the Nick Cannon thing has a lot to do with who runs Viacom CBS versus laws in particular.
Yeah, but see, those things come. I honestly firmly believe those things come in hand in hand, because Viacom is owned and ran by a group of people who have a certain level of financial influence and power, and we know that many people in our government are ran by financial influence and power. So because and people like, well, how can corporate tax stuff. It's like, well, how can you say that, Mike? I was like, well, easy, because you had people like Warren and Maxine Waters and the late John Lewis, the late Elijah Cummings, Joe Biden. You have a collection of people whose average of time in Congress is probably 35 years. And they knew about black people's issues the whole 35 years.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just let that sit and breathe, and I'll leave that be. So I'm glad that we don't really see we're not really differ that much about the particular sports and what they've been doing. I thought we were gonna sit here and be on starch. I thought we was gonna be on super opposite sides of the fence. I already.
Well, I mean, I personally, I think the amount of awareness that the NBA is bringing to it, I love it.
Okay.
When I heard about it, I'm not necessarily like, oh, I got to turn the game off. Nah, we do differ in that respect. Like I enjoy seeing it. I think the fact that it's kind of is propped up the way it is, that you kind of can't escape it when you watch it, is a good thing. Because once we start to let it go by the wayside, that's when stuff just stops.
Yeah, but what's stopping them from letting it? Why would they let it go by the way? Why would these players in the NBA and the players that care about the NFL and in general, why would they let it go by the wayside when they have a multi-trillion-dollar platform? When they combine their resources to be able to do something about it?
I can't answer that, but I'm just speaking from a general sense of like just overall awareness, like that. people kind of get into their own kind of life, and they kind of hermit to their own life. And
Yes.
it just oh, I got basketball practice, I gotta do a radio show, I gotta sit down for a TV interview with ESPN. Like, they kind of get into their thing. I gotta call my agent tomorrow. And then there are still these things that they could be talking to that they don't, because it's not in the forefront, aside from maybe like a select few in the NBA that maybe don't make as much money. They're probably, the sixth man on the bench, maybe coming off the bench, whatever. They're not this high big profile, but they do have the resources, right?
Yes.
Separated from the majority of us, to be able to prop up that nonprofit, or to be able to lobby their local state senators and House representatives, and get people voting and doing all the off screen kind of stuff.
Yes.
It still lends to making that awareness level high. And
Yes.
I think that's important, because we only have so many people that are at the financial level that they are within our community.
Yes.
Right, and a good majority of them do engage in sports. So the or at least watching it,
Yes.
they're able to see it. If you want to put it this way, like the Ava DuVernays of the world, the music, the Jay-Z's and Sean Combs of the world, the movie producers, and these people still engage in watching the NBA or watching the NFL, and being able to, like, yeah, man, like, this stuff is still going on, and not having it just kind of be external to their rich people bubble.
Yeah, because they don't have to necessarily deal with that. You're right.
Exactly.
I
So
understand.
it kind of still brings a lightning rod that I'm grateful for in that aspect. Like, it gets into the ear of the people that can on our side of things really be able to get in the room with a senator, and be able to get in the room with the House representative, or somebody on Capitol Hill, just from their notoriety alone, right? And say, oh yeah,
Well, that's what Anquan Bolden did. Anquan Bolden stopped playing football, and he has been putting in actual physical work in Congress, like actual with actual national representatives, which is, I believe, is different from putting Black Lives Matter on your basketball court. That's and so my only point is this. This my final point to it. And I'll let you wrap up this segment. My final point to it is this. You understand and see the problem with what the NBA is doing based on their relations and refusal to address the issues that's been going on, the human rights violations that have been going on in China.
Yeah.
Do you see how when it comes to, now granted, two things can be true at once. I am not a one-dimensional thinker. This is not an either or fallacy. I can acknowledge that the NBA can be trying to bring awareness to issues of racial injustice in America in a safer environment than they would be if they tried to do that nonsense in China. So Laura Ingraham told LeBron James to shut up and dribble in her rant. China told LeBron James to shut up and dribble. He only listened to one of them. So that's, take that what you will.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I just from the bigger standpoint of what it means for awareness, and just for me, I am glad to see it. It kind of pushes it forward some, and says, yeah, it doesn't just stop here at me saying, as a player, or as a movie exec, or as a music mogul, that this thing matters, right? It just it helps to propagate it to everybody. Hey, yeah, this is something we need to continuously strive to go forward at, and get enacted like we should, to the point where it's people like you and me, just in the grassroots of things, that can go out and organize something locally, or establish a petition locally.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
it helps to kind of fuel that stuff, so it's not just so that we don't even just get back into our daily until the next body drops. You
Yeah,
know,
and I think there's a lot of
having
people. There's a lot of people who have, because I've seen it long before the NBA tried to is doing what they're doing. Long before Colin Kaepernick, I've seen people in my original community before I moved out to where we are now. They were consistently active and didn't have any of the notoriety of these athletes and these celebrities, and they were constantly changing lives at the grassroots level.
hmm
So like I said, so they and all the stuff that's been going on has only enhanced what they've been doing because they've been telling people the same stuff for a long period of time. But it's one of those things where I see them teaching people how to grow their own food because they understand that they can no longer trust the government to actually deliver on certain goods and services. So they're teaching their communities to grow their own food. That's one of the most valuable things I've ever seen.
yeah.
To me, that's just as valuable as LeBron James building the school. Now, in my opinion, he should be fully funding that school. He has the money to be able to do it. But at the very least, having our own schools to create a good education, equity, more equitable education opportunities, growing our own food to create more equitable food options for ourselves. I believe all those things really encompass what I mean when I talk about Black Lives Mattering to me, where I want us to be able to have the ability to defend ourselves via the Second Amendment, have the ability to make sure that we are free to do what we need to do through our process and our First Amendment rights, to be able to freely be able to be free from any kind of government nonsense. I've seen that LA is going to go ahead and the mayor of LA is going to go ahead and authorize that people who decide to go ahead and do their own thing during this Rona can have their power and their water shut off. Well, I'm sorry. I understand Darth Orange is
Wow.
fascist. I understand you want to call Darth Orange fascist. That's actual fascism.
Right.
That's an actual form.
Wow.
That's an actual form of fascism. That's another conversation, though. You should look it up. It's kind of funny. It's kind of hilarious. I wanted to ask you a question as we've been going through our various topics here. A few weeks ago, we didn't get to it. We both have our own lives here, and we got to do what we have to do. But you see the share screen that I have in front of you.
Oh yeah, I've got it.
I heard this story, and you know me enough to know I don't cuss a lot. That's probably the most you ever heard me cuss about something.
It's hard to remember.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. We haven't had a conversation We haven't had a conversation in weeks. But when this white culture thing from this facility came out, and I'm not going to cuss. I've gotten over those initial feelings of hatred and anger and frustration over it. I really thought about how these higher level institutions view Black people and Black culture in general. When Republicans use Baltimore, St. Louis, New York, Chicago, LA as their talking points for why Black people shouldn't be crying about Black Lives Matter in comparison, because the numbers of police involved deaths to Black people in comparison to Black people involved deaths to Black people the gap is as wide as the Grand Canyon. It's actually as wide as the Pacific Ocean. We're really talking real raw numbers here. But it also lets me know that the people who are for us and claim that they're for us actually view us in comparison to white people, thinking that some of these things in this list, and I actually had a Black woman who there's some history behind how they have been co-opted to destroy the Black family by white liberal legislation. It's not their fault entirely. They had to take the ticket. The ticket was given to them. It was it incentivized the destruction of the Black family. I saw these things, man, and I'm telling you, I got, if I can click this properly, I got fired up in ways that I never got fired up before, man. I was highly and wholly disappointed in how they thought that, like, for example, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I just want to go through some basic things. Let's look at the family structure here. On this aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture in the United States. The family structure says the nuclear family, father, mother, 2.3 children is the ideal social unit. First of all, no one ever asks these kind of critical questions. what's the 0.3 child? Like, what is that? Is that a child that has a deficiency in height? I don't understand
Yeah.
where the 0.3 came from. Like 2.3 children doesn't make any sense. If you said maybe that was a typo, maybe they went to 2 to 3 children. I don't know. But
Yeah.
as soon as they went to family structure, who did they attack? They attacked the father. Husband is the breadwinner, head of the household. Well, maybe the head, but this is a cooperative effort. Like the father has certain roles and aspects that makes him stronger, and then the wife, the mother, has certain aspects and roles that make her stronger. To reverse either of those roles, because we're now in this day and age where that's not necessarily the case, where the man does this and the woman does this. Like it has been some swapping going on. We notice that there's a certain structure to the family, and it just seems to work, and it works consistently. And I ain't talking about allowing your husband to be a toxic buzzard and beat on you and abuse your kids. We ain't talking about that nonsense. We're talking
No.
about just a common family structure. You know,
Yeah.
children should have their own rooms and be independent. How is that a bad thing and only an example of whiteness? You
Right.
and I both got wives. Do we want our kids in our space
Well,
at
well,
10 o'clock at night on a
these.
Friday?
To be fair, this is an assumption of what that of what that is.
But I
Not a
understand it says
declaration.
it's an assumption. I understand it says an assumption, and we all know what happens when we assume. But that's called word wizardry. Why is it
Right.
called word wizardry? Is because it gives them an out in case they receive backlash from it. Because they, as an academic institution, as an institution that supports certain academics, wasn't expected to get the backlash from blacks and whites as they did. So when they put it up there, they use words to make sure they can manipulate their way out of it in case they receive backlash. This is what these kind of elite types do to cover their tracks. See, I'm the kind of person that sees it, and I call bull job on it.
Yeah, because this is just I don't even know what to call this. I just think this
I
is
call it basic structure of how a stable family
yeah,
and society functions.
right,
and
because
and this
it's
could be
not
the
white
same
or
thing.
black.
Exactly. This could be because for crying out loud, are we saying that there's cultures in Africa that are white? Like, Ghana's pretty
No.
dark as far as skin tone is concerned. China, oh gosh, China takes to a whole different level when it comes to how they,
Right.
believe that the man is the head of the household.
Sure, you can't even have two girls
You can't. Yeah, you
in
definitely
China.
can. They take that 0.3 seriously in China. Actually, they
Mm,
take that 0.3 very seriously in China when it comes to the way they do woman's reproductive rights, which that's
yeah.
a long time. History. Now, the history based on Northern European immigrants' experience in the United States. You know what? I can understand that.
In like what,
Heavy
19,
focus,
20, 30, 40,
heavy
and
focus on the
50?
British Empire. Yeah, heavy focus on the British Empire. I mean, yeah, primary Western civilization,
Mm-hmm.
Judeo-Christian tradition. By the way, Western Judeo-Christian tradition is not Western. It came from the East, where there was a lot of brown people. Another conversation for another time when it comes to Christianity and religion. Protestant work ethic. Hard work is the key to success. Work before play. If you didn't meet your goals, you didn't work hard enough. How's that white?
Man,
Now I understand
I'm with you on that. I
I
don't
understand
know.
the prevailing theory. The prevailing theory of especially there's a video that circulates around during every February with Martin Luther King talking about bootstraps, and you're sitting here telling people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps when they have no
Mhm.
boots to begin with along those lines. And I understand all that. However, in the midst of not having boots to pull up ourselves by the bootstraps, we still achieve a various amount of things that we achieved in face of real, genuine racism.
Yeah.
So, and there's certain things individually that we can point to that if you did not work hard to do what you need to do, like, can you imagine if you didn't work hard, if you would have been a cop? Would
Yeah.
you have been a cop if you didn't work hard? If you decided to go ahead and play the division more often than actually doing your police officer training, would you have been a successful police officer for the time you were there? At all?
Probably not.
Yeah,
No.
me neither. As a me in my situation, I wouldn't have been successful either if I play more than I do the work necessary before I need to play. So
Right.
call that to say that having a work ethic. By the way, I find it funny that they say having a work ethic is an indicative of whiteness, is an assumption of whiteness, because when it comes to being working, cultures like West Africans that come here, Indians from India that come here, various groups from Asia, Chinese, Korean, Japanese that come over here, their work ethic is crazy, and they out earn the majority of middle class and upper class whites by a lot. It's not even close. Like,
Yeah.
you think there's a gap between black people and white people, or between women and between women and men? Oh, the gaps between Asian, Indians, and West Africans and white families is tremendous.
But they also go for higher tier jobs too. Doctors,
exactly,
engineers,
exactly.
computers. Yeah, like,
It's almost like personal choice has a role to play here.
mm, yeah,
So yeah, religion, Christianity is the norm. Well, if we were in Saudi Arabia, Islam would be the norm. So
yeah.
that you can't really anything other than
This is a very
but
this is a
that's
narrow
yeah, like
depiction.
yeah, that white people, like, I didn't know. Remember the movie with Denzel Washington played Malcolm X?
Oh yeah,
Remember how surprised he was when he saw white Muslims?
yeah,
Yeah, so maybe no tolerance for deviation from single God concept. Now, see, that right there can reflect on Jews, Christians, and Muslims, because we are technically monotheistic religions. Anyway, okay. So wealth equals worth as far as status, power, and authority. Wealth equals worth. That's whiteness, because having, traditionally speaking, if you were in more back in time, especially when we talk about biblical times,
hmm
Abraham didn't have a lot of what we call money currency, but he had land and cattle, livestock, and all kinds of, like, that was a sign of worth, was how much stuff you have. This is something
yeah,
that was going on long before the quote unquote white man came along. Your job is who you are. How's that a symbol of whiteness? My job ain't who I am, but I don't think
right.
that's something that people suffer from, as far as people who are just workaholics. That has nothing to do with race or culture.
Yeah,
Um,
your race isn't it. It's about how you're brought up,
yes,
what you're aware of and what you're not aware of. Like,
yes,
as far as like making money, you look at how your parents made money. You understand. You either get the opportunity to understand the importance of education or you don't. Uh, Even if you do, if you don't exercise getting good grades, I mean, it just kind of falls in on itself. It has nothing to do with the tone of your skin.
amen to that. I'm not gonna go through this whole thing. You can find it for yourself. They try to take it down off
Mm.
their website, but the
Yeah, because it's
the internet's
absurd.
unforgiving. Yeah, the internet's unforgiving. This is totally absurd. But I wanted to finish off with this, because this is going to go into
Uh-huh.
your point of understanding where we are culturally and personally, to manage our financial situations and the plan for the future. You mentioned earlier that you
Uh-huh.
want to be able to thank yourself 30 years down the line for doing what you need to do now to set yourself up. They
Yeah.
call whiteness an assumption of whiteness and white culture, that you, Ron, as you were just talking about that earlier in the podcast, you plan for the future. You delay your gratification. You always progress towards the best. You're trying to always have progress, that your tomorrow is going to be better because you planned through your past, and that you make sure that you discipline yourself and understand that that time is not on your side. Time is not on anyone's side. It is a commodity, and if you waste it, you lose
Yep.
valuable dollars. Somehow, some way, as you go into your financial talking, because I'm about to take some notes myself. Somehow, Ron, you're white for
I
thinking all
know.
those things.
I wow.
Somehow you're white for thinking that. Dummies.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's just crazy, man. Um, wow. Yeah, that kind of that reading that kind of put a little fire under me too. I'm like, okay, all right, well, uh, yeah. I mean, I like to kind of make this a running theme of like kind of wrapping this up and making sure that we're um, putting a little nugget in your ear financially, as far as like whether it be life insurance, stocks, annuities, bonds, all these types of avenues of wealth, home ownership, asset ownership in general, what it means to kind of get there if you're aspiring to get to a point of self employment and owning a business, anything of that nature. That we kind of shed some light in those areas and start to help people as best we can. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm like a licensed financial advisor or anything, because I am not. I just want to put that out there. We're not going to be discussing strategies or anything in these little tidbits, but just some overall general things that kind of get people's ears perking up and understanding, um, what is going on. Um, so the one thing I do want to highlight again is getting your savings and investment started if you can. Do that. Do that as best you can. Um, uh, Robinhood is a good one. I got started with it myself. I can advocate for that. I've got a account that's been built up from I think I started at about $100. It's built up to about 500. I've bought some stocks. You get free stocks when you have your friends sign up
Hmm.
through your links and stuff like that. You both get a free stock. Your friend will get one. You'll get one. It might not be Apple. It might not be Tesla. It might not be one of these huge ones, but it'll be a free stock that you didn't have to pay for. Importantly, with that is dividends. If you can start off getting stocks with dividends, and let me rewind because some people don't know what dividends are exactly, but dividends are basically what is paid out of that share of value that you own, okay, that you've bought. So depending on the value of the share, how many shares you have, it can be anywhere from a penny to $100 to $1,000. It just depends on volume after that, but you are going to get that payment back for holding that share from said company that you can reinvest. So if you're thinking about this logically, eventually your dividends can pay for your stocks. Okay, if you have enough investment, you will get to a point and that you can take your dividends and reinvest them back into your portfolio. Okay, whatever you're holding, um, just let's just say it's $100 worth of stocks, and that stock pays you 10 cents every 3 months. Okay, well, you start to compound your investment. Eventually you're going to get to $100 dividend. Okay, now that $100 is coming back in for you to spend exactly how you like. It can either go back into that specific stock, or you can just have it go back into a general account that you buy other stocks from. But it's money that you didn't have to put in from, say, your current job or some other place of savings. Okay, this is money that's strictly coming back to you from what you currently hold until you sell it. Okay, so that's one vehicle that you can use to establish your account and grow your account. And you just keep doing that over and over and over. Some stocks will pay you quarterly. Some stocks will pay you month to month. It just depends on how they decide to do their dividend. So I would advise anybody looking to get into stocks and doing that type of thing. Like I said, use Robinhood. It's very user friendly, and it can answer any questions you might have about obtaining. Day trading, that's where you're buying stocks within the day and selling them back off. But that's a whole nother thing that we can get into on another podcast and go a little bit more in depth on. And people make money from that as well. It's basic economics with that. You're buying low and you're selling it high to make a profit. That's all you're doing, and then you redo that process over and over. But we can get into that on another podcast episode. But that's what I've got. The market is in a little bit of a flux right now, but it's been steady and it's been on the uptick for a good while. We've recessed a little bit, but it's going to come back. A lot of people get a little bit of FOMO, or fear of missing out, are feeling like they're kind of missing the boat on some stocks right now. But it's got a long way to go on the uptick right now. It's come down because of COVID and all these different market factors and speculation. Um, if I had to tell you anything, if you're gonna get started, don't let your emotions play into it. Don't feel like you got to jump in on something so quick just because you heard something on the news. All of that spurs speculation and confidence, and you don't want to get caught in the wash of that. You want to research the company or the stock you're looking to invest in, and you want to make sure that you're looking at their 1 year and their 5 year outlooks, and how, or basically their previous history. And if it's been on a consistent uptick, that's a good solid one that you might want to get into on a long-term outlook. Okay, you always want to have growth, and you always want to have something long-term that in 30 years you can say, all right, I've got this 401k or this IRA or this stock account that I've had for 30 years, and it's done nothing but grow, and that's all you want, and you can ultimately live off of that. If you've got enough stock in there, you can reinvest your dividends, or you can have your dividends, you keep the stock, you can have that dividend continue to pay you, and you can literally live off of that, depending on the frequency of what you're getting. You can live off of that, and people would actually do that. So, but of course, those are large accounts. It's just like that's having like 6-figure accounts, because you're getting dividends based on volume of what you're holding. So
yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, that's all I got. We're kind of getting down to the wire. So this has been a good episode. You got anything else, Micah?
You got the video that I sent to you recently of Joe Biden talking about how black people are not as diverse in thought as Hispanics.
Oh yes, I did.
That's so golden.
Oh, Joe.
So golden.
Joe.
like, bruh. I mean, now granted, I just ending it. Just how silly this is. You ain't black, and you don't think in a diverse way as the Hispanics do. So not only did you just call into question someone's blackness for asking you a question based on what are you going to do differently than what Donald Trump did when you've been in Congress for 40 years.
Yeah.
You also had the audacity to tell an entire voting bloc, well, you don't have as good as thinkers and diversity as this voting bloc does.
All I can say is Joe is spreading the wealth. He's the Peter Griffin of politics right now.
Oh gosh, he is. Joe Biden is the gift that keeps on giving, and when I mean gift, I mean both in words and in video. Because creepy, sleepy, you ain't black, you don't think well. Oh, there's so many.
It's so much, man.
And see, once again, and dear Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee, don't think that you're gonna be slick and pull Hillary out the last minute when you have Joe Biden as presumptive favorite here. Okay, don't try to pull that nonsense. That's not going to help you. Also, Joe, the last thing he can do right now is to pick Kamala Harris, because then not only would you have legislation in your past that destroyed black people to a certain extent. Then you was also on legislation of the Patriot Act, which violates people's individual liberties. Then you came out with, then you have all kinds of videos of you sniffing girls and women in public. Then you ain't black. Then you have this. If you pick Kamala Harris on top, is all the things that you said about black people over to one person, whose own dad don't even care for her, own father don't even.
Personally, I think you should go with either Rice or go with Abrams.
I don't think he should go with Abrams. I really don't. I think that would be a really bad pick, because outside of the sympathy that she'll get from the situation that happened in Georgia, which I'm still not understanding that situation, but that's another conversation. Outside that situation, what happened in Georgia for her to get sympathy, what does she have that's credible about her? That's truly credible, where we can bring her to the national stage. I would rather argue for AOC if I'm going to go for somebody.
Oh no!
I know. I think it's really horrible. I think that's really horrible. But I'm saying, as far as just,
I mean, she'd be a fighter.
yeah, at least
That's
you
for
got
sure.
somebody. You got somebody who can actually go toe to toe with Donald Trump when it comes to verbal bashing. Because the Trump versus Biden debate is going to be, Trump's going to have to make sure he does this very gentle, because no one likes seeing people beat up on old people. No one likes seeing it.
Nah.
So you can't. The way Joe's been acting, Donald Trump going in like he did against Hillary will look really bad optically for Donald Trump. But the AOC will at least fight back. She'll destroy Pence. She'll sound like a crazy person, but she'll at least destroy Pence debate-wise, because she'll be able to really be more convincing. And she's actually, and no offense to Abrams, but you need someone attractive if you're going to pick a female vice president. Someone moderately attractive. You need someone attractive.
Oh,
you need someone attractive. Look, Ms. Abrams, you're a fantastic person. Obviously, you didn't do well in your election. But if we're going for optics here, you already got this old, wrinkly, creepy white guy. Maybe you should go with someone who has some attractiveness. That's probably why he was going after Kamala, because she's somewhat more attractive than Stacey Abrams. She actually is more attractive than Stacey Abrams. And I'm not saying that because Stacey Abrams is dark skinned, because I love Lisa from Chocolate Sisters. I love me from Chocolate Sisters. I'm just saying that because she's actually just not attractive. So
okay, well, I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe we could probably lay into this on the next cast, man.
Yeah, who should Joe Biden, if he doesn't pick anybody beforehand, who should he pick? And remember, you ain't black.
That's right.
I'm definitely using that for the title of this episode. # you ain't black.
You ain't black.
Anyway, as Ron has told me, he's giving me the wrap it up B sign. That is all the time we have for today. I need to go eat some of this barbecue that I cooked. And y'all, thank you very much for supporting our podcast and listening every single week. I am Micah.
And I'm Ron.
And this is
In the Middle.